Hello, everyone. Welcome to Digital Manufacturing Dialogues by ETManufacturing, where we invite industry experts and leaders to share their different perspectives on the various facets of digital manufacturing, locally as well as globally. So, our guest today is Mr. S Sathish, who is the partner and national sector leader industrial manufacturing at KPMG. Satish, welcome to the show and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Shekhar. Really, thanks for the opportunity to talk about one of the most happening topics in India as well as globe. Of course, as like any other interview, many of the views, while I've definitely published a thought leadership on this topic, some of the discussions we will have, or many of them will be where I'll share my views, which are personal, about interpretation of some of this and the way it's actually happening today in India.
I'm sure, like you take any article or any conference related to manufacturing, it won't go without discussing the digital manufacturing or AI.
Yes.
So we'll continue with the same topic with you, along with some other questions as well. So I would like to start with your recent thought leadership on intelligent manufacturing that emphasizes that the AI is no longer a choice, but a strategic necessity. Of course,
Yeah.
it has been said and many times by many leaders as well. So how do you see this mindset shift happening among the Indian manufacturing leaders?
So let me give a bit of a background. So, Shekhar, if you really look at, we are actually living in a very interesting times. Okay. Now, the way I'll qualify this is the degrees of change. Okay. In terms of which direction, which aspects is actually going to change, the degrees of change and the acceleration of change has increased multifolds than what we witnessed maybe in the last decade. Okay, so if you really look at it, there are a lot of changes which are actually driven by geopolitics, okay, which was not to the space, which was actually seen over the last 5 years. So, which necessarily means it actually demands agility by Indian CEOs to look at what positions they need to take, given the changes which is actually happening. So, that's one as a driver, I say, when I meant as a strategic necessity. Second is if I actually look at customers are also getting knowledgeable about AI as a tool which is actually available. Hence, their needs are also increasing. They are looking at mass customization. Okay, now how do you may produce various products, but how can you customize it for me to meet my need more precise and sharp? I would not want to buy a product where somebody else buys. It may be similar, but what is the level of customization you have done it for me is also another dimension which is coming in, which necessarily means you need more agility in response. You need to be more precise. And it needs deeper understanding of patterns, per se, in terms of what exactly is going on in your business transactions, nature of transactions, segments, and others. Hence, you need a very strong technology backup and a tool which can actually help you to act swiftly. So, AI, I would say, is a boon which is actually available to handle all these expectations of businesses at the right time. Hence, I say it's no more a choice, it's a strategic necessity because it's very difficult for organizations to respond faster without a tool like AI.
As he pointed out, even the customers are very because of the various information sources available today. But the problem where lies it? Many manufacturers still struggle with the heterogeneous and so what should be the first step in building a strong data strategy that unlocks the AI's full potential?
Sure, absolutely. So, if you really look at, maybe adoption, of AI overall, maybe, maybe just will take a minute to explain the background of the thought leadership. We interviewed almost 1,390 decision makers across the globe. Okay. And we also collaborated with some of the SMEs of Stanford University to look at, the AI journey overall. Interestingly, 93% of the decision makers whom we interviewed felt organizations which are adopting AI will have stronger competitive advantage. Okay, something which was very, very clear. And out of that, 45% of them have got results more than maybe 10% ROI, something which they've actually got. So which means even that was a very similar pattern we saw even in Indian CEOs. All of them, most of them agree that this adoption is important. And so that's given. Now, as you very rightly actually said, the reason why maybe many Indian organizations struggle a bit is not only Indian organizations for that matter, it's also a phenomena we saw across, even global organizations. Is two, three folds is what we actually saw as challenges. One of the challenges is basically availability of good quality data. Okay, is what it is, because data availability, if you look at it, there are three, four challenges. One is data, the ownership of data is different. Okay, some is maintained by manufacturing, some is actually customer data. There is a production planning data maintained by the supply chain. There is warranty data maintained by sales. So first of all, data owners are very, very different. And the granularity of data is very different. Maybe one is collected once in a month, once is collected once in an hour, and so on and so forth. So it's very heterogeneous across the value chain. Okay, that's something which is there. So that's one big problem. And also, it is also maintained in multiple systems, okay, which are not talking to each other. Okay, so the primary is a kind of a data challenge, the way to look at it. And second is the soft side of it, in terms of people adopting AI, the insecurities around AI, to go about looking at it. There are two, I would say, two broad buckets, and of course, the challenges with AI itself, okay, in terms of, the explainability, the fairness, how do we bring in trust? So these are the three buckets of why, if you really look at, has adoption gone to the extent of, what it should be? It's not really there. So one of the ways I would actually suggest, where they need to go about looking at is, first of all, of course, you can't solve this problem overnight. Okay, it's a problem which need to be actually done. So one of the first things which companies need to actually look at is in their business environment, which are areas where AI needs to be deployed, which are the ones where there are high business value areas need to be identified first. To look at, okay, well, I do it in sales, for the business I'm in, or more value comes in manufacturing, or more value actually comes in. So identify a priority areas where, AI is something which the organization actually wants to look at it. Second is, to go about looking at what is the quality of data which is actually available on those areas identified is something one needs to look at it. So depending on the data availability and the business impact it's actually going to create, and also what level of foundational systems which are available. Okay, have you got enough of data lake available, or the warehouses available, or your data is connected with each other? How do you what is the level of data infrastructure which is exactly there is also something one needs to go about identification. So and then based on all the three, and fourth of course is readiness of people for adopting the system. So based on all the four, one needs to actually create a kind of a roadmap to look at. Of course, I mean, this is eventually is the way I'm going to transform the organization, but I would actually like to start with this function, build certain foundations, build certain actually, communication and training programs for my people to remove some amount of insecurity, and also teach them the new method of adopting. So first and foremost things I would actually say an organization is to create a AI implementation blueprint by assessing all these dimensions, and then start implementing on each of these dimensions parallel.
I have been interacting with many industry leaders on this topic, especially for the data silos. So, is it correct that there is, of course, enormous amount of data generated in every industry? So, out of which almost 3 to 4% data is only used in terms of the digital transformation initiatives in India.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
development, it might be more. So, how do you strategize this percentage? How to make sure that this percentage gets increased so that each and every data generated is available for use so as to get a successful digital transformation journey?
So, if you really look at it, of course, Shekhar, we divided this entire journey of any organizations getting into AI into three parts. Okay, I mean, it's a one cannot call it as a maturity journey, but one is a progression of how an organization can go into. We divided that into three parts, which is enable, embed, and evolve. As three, of course, that's something which we can speak as a part of the conversation a bit later. But what it exactly means is that it actually looks at, enable looks at setting up data infrastructure, people, and getting this right. Embed is actually, evolving it and doing it further, and evolve is actually all about ecosystem. So to start with, enable actually focuses on functional use cases. Now, maybe consciously, while we will not wait for data to be, because the biggest benefit of AI will come in when you do cross-functional and when you also do ecosystem connect, is where the maximum benefits of AI can actually come in. So while you set up the data connection, okay, at first is between functions and then functions to organizations and at an ecosystem, it may start with function. Now, with functional uses, Maybe the degree of usage of data can be higher because it is still remaining, we are talking only about functional data, but the degree of usability can be actually better. While they start working onto it, parallelly foundations need to be laid for connecting cross-functional data which are heterogeneous, and hence you can actually increase the power of data. So maybe within functional, I may not say 3 to 4% can be a higher percentage because we're talking about functional data. 3 to 4% data, when you talk about it, it may be more cross-functional data or even more ecosystem data is what we are talking about today. We are not in a position to connect ecosystem, definitely only very, very few ecosystem players, that may be lesser. Even cross-functional is still better, but not fully connected as that a functional. So we may start with functional, then go cross-functional, then go ecosystem-wise. Shekhar, that's the way one should go about it.
That probably is very challenging task to involve the ecosystem.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely right. You can control it within. So the way it actually happens is that for you to get benefits from AI, the bigger benefits will actually come from connecting data systems, different data systems, and applying intelligence on top of it. Now, just to give you somewhat of an example, when we talk about maybe an ecosystem connect, say, for example, functional, we are talking about maybe looking only within manufacturing. Maybe when we say cross-functional, I'm looking at across the supply chain. I extended when I say ecosystem, I'm connecting my supply chain within my 4 blocks of organization to including suppliers and customers. Not only suppliers and customers, I connect with the transport ecosystem, I connect with regulations, I connect with networks available, public networks available, by which I'm able to get all information seamlessly to take a decision to look at maybe if my truck, when should it actually leave, when should it pick up, when should it actually reach to the customer by seamlessly integrating. So that's the way one needs to go about looking at it. And that's a real power of AI, which can help in bringing in more precision and efficiency.
That's a very huge task, I can see.
Yes.
Right.
Shekhar. Yeah.
Question about the survey of the global industrial manufacturing decision makers. So I'm just curious to know what surprised you most about this AI adoption patterns across the geographies.
Yeah. So if you really look at it, I would not say surprised may not be the way. Like, for example, if you really look at it, I've always seen for other technologies, there is always differences, which means maybe your developed nations are far higher and maybe India catching up is something which I've seen as a pattern for some of the technologies when it actually emanated. But, maybe yes, to be surprised from the perspective, the degree of AI progression, okay, and adoption is similar as a pattern we saw within India as well as in outside, okay, in terms of looking at it, because everybody is exploring what are the ways to go about doing adoption of AI. Okay, that's something which means we are almost at similar levels, okay, in terms of adoption of this technology, which is something I would say may not be surprised, but something different than the earlier technologies we have actually seen. We always used to operate with a kind of a lag, with what we have seen elsewhere. But having said that, maybe what I saw is maybe the degree of data integration is far more better. Okay, maybe because of the systems and the availability of data is far more better in some of the Western countries and developed countries than the broken level of data connects within India. So, which means the AI progression rate, hence, can be a bit more faster outside than what we actually compare to India, unless we are actually going to focus about it. When I'm talking about it's about ecosystem connect, it's about maybe level 3 of one can be more faster outside than inside. That's what I see, Shekhar.
As you notice that change management has been highlighted by many organizations as a major barrier in the adoption of digital manufacturing technologies.
Yes.
Can manufacturing leaders ease workforce insecurities and bring both shop floor and top floor people on board in this
Yeah.
digital transformation?
Absolutely. And Shekhar, it's a fantastic question, okay, because this is a big elephant in the room in that sense. Okay. So very, very rightly said, one of the key reasons, as I said right in the beginning, of non-adoption of AI or a slow adoption of AI is the change management or the people element part of it. There is good amount of insecurities associated, okay, in terms of what will happen, okay, if AI actually comes in, is something which is there with respect to maybe the top is actually wanting to implement, while the middle and the lower are actually wondering how this is going to go about looking at it. So a good amount of unlearning and relearning are required. The company should actually focus in a lot of skill development, as you rightly said, at a lower level as well as in the middle level. With a lower level, to familiarize them with concepts of AI and also to tell them how AI can help in enhancing their productive work. Okay, it's not about only about replacement. Maybe the people, maybe some jobs may get automated, can be more intelligently automated, but that will free time for them to do some more value added work. Is the communication which the teams need to be actually done. So good amount of skill development initiatives need to be done to look at differentiating different types of AI. What are the applications of AI for their work can be done is something which needs to be educated. That's something which is very very clearly go about to be done. When you actually come up to with respect to middle managers, a similar insecurity actually lies. Like for example, maybe at an operating level, it is more to do with how different systems and what data needs to actually come in, and how do they synchronize to take decision need to be educated to blue collar people. Whereas with middle level, they need to actually look at what are the different data coming to them as functions, what kind of decisions they can take intelligently. Now with AI than moving in the past, and also some amount of a communication. It is also kind of a competency building. Okay, it's true with any system which come in. Maybe tomorrow earlier when ERP actually came in, good amount of change management and education was done till the time it actually became to be adopted. It's a similar transition where need to be done. It's only that it's fastly evolving. Okay, and faster evolution is happening. So there's a good amount of education and change management, good amount of education need to be done. Maybe what is important is also some amount of a brainstorming sessions with middle management to look at how the process is going to do differently with AI. And what will be their new changed roles is a kind of a communication, because many times this insecurity is because of lack of communication, and the lack of the unknown is what is creating. So that should be a focused effort on communicating, reskilling, redefinition of roles, and what are the change roles. That kind of communication and handholding is important whenever we are actually going about implementing AI. And there should be a game plan which organization should actually prepare to look at where they are going to start with, why they're not starting with somewhere else. Maybe it is because more a data challenge than any other reason, or that communication is very, very important to handle this change management challenge. And as you rightly said, there's a lot of training need to be done even for leaders to look at how should they handle, okay, not only learning about AI, but how should they handle this insecurity? How should they handle this change? What should be the communication given to them? What is if their leaders are able to articulate this roadmap to their people, a lot of, I would say, comfort can be brought into the team to adopt such a change in technology.
That's correct. I think the communication will play a very important role, and that should be the across the different departments and across levels.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. In the thought leadership, your report contributor, you are the among one of the contributors there. So
Yeah,
there is a mention of this framework which you already discussed, enable, embed, and evolve. So
yeah,
that provides a phased approach to AI adoption.
yeah,
At
yeah.
what stage do you think most Indian manufacturing companies are today, and what will help them to move to the next stage?
So I will maybe explain the framework a bit, Shekhar, for the benefit of the audience. We divided basically a progression or a roadmap for any organization to progress or leap in the AI transformation journey. So that is divided into three broad phases, which we actually called as enable, embed, and evolve. Okay, are the three phases which we actually talked about. And if you really talk about, there are the one is these are three phases, and there are three levels. Okay, in terms of when we go about looking at it, one is maybe enable. One can relate with building the foundation. Okay, which necessarily means you have an AI structure in place, identify what are the high level use cases where implementation need to be done, prepare your team, define kind of guidelines and frameworks to go about looking at it, test AI, get benefits, set up the foundation. That's what is actually enable. Second is, so here the focus is dominantly on functional use cases, is where building foundation and testing. Embed actually talks about doing a bit of a cross function. More people have actually participated in doing AI. You're taking higher order problems to be implemented, strengthening further guidelines, and in terms of with respect to trust on AI and risk frameworks. That's actually done where the movement is from functional to cross functional. That's what is typically the embed part of it. And evolve is even more higher advanced, where it is no more within the organization, it's actually connecting ecosystem. So which necessarily means, it's, if I were to talk about a different dimension, it's function, enterprise, and ecosystem. Okay, that's the growth. And if I were to map maybe different Indian organizations, I would say many of them today are in the first phase, which is actually enable phase, where there is no more doubt that AI will help them, and AI is definitely a strategic necessity to make a difference. People are actually identifying which all areas they would want to go about applying AI, They're going functions by functions, identifying use cases to and train people, communication. So it's dominantly in first phase is what many Indian companies are in, Shekhar.
That's very interesting framework, and I'm sure with this framework we can easily identify at what stage a particular company is in, and accordingly decide the strategy to go further.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Then there is an important question. Beyond efficiency gains, how do you see AI reshaping the operating models in manufacturing? For example, moving from, say, reactive to predictive, or now the autonomous systems.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So if we really look at efficiency gains, definitely will be a kind of a no-brainer. Okay, where there is a process improvement, it can actually help in terms of maybe optimizing cost of a particular quality or a particular product or a particular operation. That's something which is being done. But there are interesting applications which are actually there. One is in terms of your supply chain planning, which necessarily means you connect the entire ecosystem, right from your procurement or material planning, your manufacturing, your dispatch. And how do you dynamically do supply chain planning, which tomorrow, if a demand has actually dropped by say 10%, okay, how is it going to impact in terms of different planning with respect to material planning, manufacturing, what is the change I need to go about doing, how is it going to impact my finances? So there I see there is a connected agentic play, okay, which is being done beyond individual functional efficiencies. A connected efficiency is something which is actually evolving. We are seeing. We're also seeing that in terms of, there are, like, for example, if there is a manufacturing which is a connected ecosystem, we have seen models, agentic models actually coming in terms of optimizing process parameters dynamically to ensure that the right product quality is produced at the end. Okay, is something we are actually seeing. We're also seeing agents proactively communicating with suppliers to look at, refining or providing that particular feedback based on inputs from manufacturing. That's something we are seeing it. Okay, this is in terms of dominantly from manufacturing. If you look at even in manufacturing sector itself, the other areas where in operations AI is quite extensively used is one is on commodity forecasting, depending on where AI is used for comparing your own demand information, which is internal, with external information in terms of the prices of commodity, movement of different indices. And it gives a kind of a recommendation to look at what kind of positions you can take for that commodity, how much quantity to buy, when to buy. All that is something. Do you need to buy early and buy more, or buy late and buy less? What kind of strategies you will take, a very informed strategy as a good decision support system. We are seeing AI being quite extensively used. We're also seeing AI used as a negotiation buddy, because one of the common challenges I've seen across manufacturers is getting year on year 5 to 10% with suppliers is becoming very difficult. So how do you go about looking at it? So this negotiation buddy is very interesting. It actually tracks information from every supplier event or every negotiation which is done year on year. It analyzes patterns of the supplier, okay, to look at some may yield by giving more volume, some may yield by giving more credit terms. It also looks at external information. It also looks at whatever is the data which is collected from outside to about the supplier, the rating, the performance. And then what it does is actually it gives kind of a negotiation. If there are 17 levers of negotiation, last time you applied 2, 5, and 7 with the supplier, it says that this time you can apply 3, 7, and 9, or 3, 8, and 9. And last time the supplier actually, when you give more volumes, he reduces price by this. So these are the strategies you can actually adopt. It's a very, very important use case, an interesting use case I see adopted by many industrial manufacturing companies. In other areas, now apart from operations, also AI is very widely used. Especially, it's also used in intelligent recruitment. It also helps you to look at where you need to source from, what are the kind of people, how they have actually performed, what is the profile of the people who have performed. Hence, what is the profile you need to look for in the market. It also superimposes attrition rates on top of it to look at what kind of profile of people you need to go about looking at it. I see intelligent use case adopted by some of the companies. It's also quite used in customer segmentations and focus strategy development and sales and marketing. It is also used in finance, especially on conversational finance. When a lot of data is actually being done, you need to take quick decisions. So some kind of a conversational finance where you get data, where you can ask questions and you are able to get data. It analyzes a lot of data, correlates insights, and provides It is also used for new product development in terms of crashing. Like for example, this is applied in one. Maybe I'll talk about it in a bit later, where it actually helps in terms of crashing new product development time. For industrial manufacturing. So these are all many different applications of AI beyond pure efficiency gains. Shekhar, very very interesting areas. It's about any kind of business process where there's a lot of data available, connecting business processes to look at decisions, what has been taken in the past, and with data, what are the new decisions need to be taken. Those are areas where AI is being used as I speak to you, Shekhar.
Yeah, it's indeed an interesting phenomenon. I think we can expect in the next few years about the AI adoption by the entire ecosystem and how this ecosystem players will respond to this.
Yes.
Right.
So when you go about saying ecosystem, it's an interesting one. Of course, it may take, as you rightly said, because of the level of data we have within the organization and between functions, ecosystem connect will take some more time. But I will not be surprised. It also provides a new business opportunity for many intermediaries to come together, collate this information available from external websites, and act as a mediator for providing organizations. So this 5 years can even be crashed with the rate of change. But what I see per se in terms of when ecosystems are actually coming together, the different areas which can come in is one, I see it may no longer only be sector specific problems. It can also be cross industry or cross sector partnerships is something which I see can come in, where data between two sectors are analyzed to go about, either predicting demand or predicting supplies, or it is also quite widely used in sustainability in terms of output from one sector on products can be used as input for other product to go about optimizing green emissions. That is something which I see can actually come in. I also see that maybe ecosystem can actually come in between organizations, can also be between organizations and even the logistics ecosystem, which is necessarily means your transporters, your ships, your rails, which actually looks at to help us, to go about predicting, getting visibility of logistics on the end-to-end supply chain. I see that is something which can actually come in very, very clearly, is something. And I also see today, when we say ecosystem, today companies can also look at, say, for example, today you're coming into a country, you would want to evaluate your sourcing strategy to look at who are all the suppliers available on globe at what price points, who are all the suppliers who are actually available from a supplier database, connecting both of them to look at what should be your supply strategy, who are some things you may need to go about buying it from. That's something I see, as an ecosystem of, suppliers coming together per se in terms of, looking at it. We are also able to see maybe, smart factories can also coordinate with energy providers. When I say ecosystem plays, it can be energy providers, it can be urban planners, it can also be logistic hubs connecting with each other to create fully optimized industrial operations. So it's very, very exciting to talk about an ecosystem play where multiple data systems come together to arrive at solving either sectoral issues or cross-organizational issues, between multiple databases. That's what we are seeing will evolve, as we actually go along, per se. So what it actually calls for is maybe, as I said, it's maybe a central body coordinating between sectors to look at what is the data which need to be leveraged between sectors to go about solving these kind of problems is something is the need of the hour, Shekhar.
Yeah, it's interesting, exciting, but at the same time, it would be challenging to get the entire ecosystem on the same page.
Correct. Absolutely. So, which necessarily means, maybe, as I said, some of this, what is important is to identify what are the different databases as inputs which are required, which are all the ecosystems need to be connected, and what are maybe that can also be a business opportunity which can be, thrown out to look at, maybe people who would want to come up to connect these databases to provide these insights. Those are some things which will, I'm sure will happen over the next 1-2 years.
True.
As I when I interact with multiple people, I hear, some of them have actually tested and tried with some extended ecosystem to get benefits. So they are working towards, for the organization, how to make it possible. It actually calls for connecting between organizations because this as a value can be also leveraged by all organizations. So it need to be formalized and standardized.
So, going further, talking about the KPMG, KPMG has a strong presence in India's manufacturing sector. So, how is it helping the clients identify the most value creating AI use cases across procurement, production, and supply chain?
Yeah, sure. So the way we are actually looking at per se is now that, when I interact with many, many CEOs and many, many organizations, one, as I said, all of them agree that they would want to venture into AI. Many of them have actually planned investments in AI and all that. One of the questions where they are facing is, where do I start? Okay, where do I go about applying? Is it that should I start in my core business area, which I need in terms of in my support functions? Is where many of them are actually looking at it. And there's a lot of education to leadership, because there are different kinds of AI which come in. There is, you have your conversational AI, you have your Gen AI coming in, you have your agentic AI actually coming in. So what are the different terms? So there is some amount of familiarization is something which you're doing with the leadership of different companies. We are also assessing their own business process to look at which are all the high business impact areas where AI can be leveraged and what is the maximum return. Because one of the important things is not about adopting AI for adopting AI. It is also about, if I adopt AI, what is the kind of business value it can unearth for the business, establishing the kind of business case. That's the second thing which is actually being done. And third is also showcasing them the art of the possible, because one of the important areas is also to open up to them to say that it is not that something you are experimenting for the first time. There are a lot of people who have actually done. These are all the different use cases which are being done. These are the different frameworks which are being done. And then with all these inputs, making them to deliberate, to look at for their organizations, maybe these are all the top 3-4 areas where they would actually want to go about looking at within functional. These are all the cross-functional areas where they would want to go about looking at it. That's the way things are actually happening, and we are facilitating them completely end-to-end, right from familiarization, evaluation, creating a roadmap, and implementation, Shekhar. That's where we are doing.
Okay. Uh, Talking about the manufacturing, the entire global manufacturing, with supply chains diversifying amid this geopolitical shifts and especially the tariff war. So, how can India strengthen its position as a reliable global manufacturing hub, especially against the competition from say countries like Vietnam and Mexico, which are very rapidly coming up?
Sure, Shikhar. So if you really look at it, I mean, with, of course, China plus one was happening for some time. While India gained in a few notches, Vietnam and Mexico gained a bit more, okay, in terms of, looking at it. Maybe if you ask me, some of the key areas where we should really go about, focusing on per se is one, how do we go about improving our cost competitiveness or reducing cost in operations? Okay, so there is still a focus to go about enhancing efficiencies as well as quality and cost, okay, which means improving our processes, okay, by minimizing efficiencies, improving productivity. That is where some of these tools like AI will be very, very useful to go about doing things much, much more faster. Taking right positions to go about optimizing cost is something which we need to go about looking at it, by which we can shift irrespective of whatever is the tariffs which have been slashed on India. We are still more competitive, than compared to many other competition, is something which we need to go about looking at it. Second important point I would actually say is also to go about enhancing the supplier ecosystem and their quality. Today, if you really look at it, I mean, one of the important ways, if you are to become a global manufacturing hub like Vietnam and Mexico, it's important for us to not only develop bigger organizations, but also to develop their supplier ecosystem. Okay, the way the quality they do, the adoption of many manufacturing leading practices, adoption of technology at the supplier ecosystem, connecting the supplier ecosystem with the main organization, creating visibility between suppliers and manufacturing. That's a big area which need to be worked on if you want to go about improving competitiveness, because competitiveness today is not only within the four walls of the manufacturing, it is also about within extended ecosystem of suppliers coming in. So unless we improve that chain, it's going to be difficult. Third important area, I would say, of course, there's more, of course, a lot is being done by the government, but still our own infrastructure, there's a lot more need to be done from in terms of connectivity, in terms of, different pockets of India, how it can be connected, how many of the port processes can be improved to improve efficiencies. How do we ensure that there is seamless infrastructure to transport material across India? All that are actually challenges which need to be addressed, Shekhar. Okay, we have definitely come a long way, but maybe some bit of a support and some bit of a focused supplier ecosystem development will help us in terms of competing with Vietnam and Mexico and beating them eventually.
But going further, if you say, okay, cost competitiveness is one of our advantages,
Yeah.
and also the talent pool. But to move up the value chain, Indian manufacturing also needs to have some innovation-led global approach. So,
Yes.
what do you think? What kind of strategies or what kind of framework the Indian manufacturing needs, both from the government as well as from the industry?
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you had to go about looking at from an innovation perspective, we need to actually identify as I said, uh, pockets of where we need to bring in technologies. Okay, because today also if you really look at many of the manufacturing areas, our dependency on imports is still higher. Okay, which is in a way going about building cost perspective. So what we need to also go about looking at, maybe from a government, of course, government has actually done in many, many cases. So what we need to go about looking at, a lot of innovation should go about looking at product design itself. Okay, to look at maybe, can I actually bring in some amount of a substitute material to go about bringing in reducing costs, reduce my dependency on external imports is something which the companies need to actually go about looking at it, where companies and maybe universities can collaborate to arrive at best value engineering, best product designs, optimized product designs to go about optimizing costs. That's something which need to be done. Of course, government needs to facilitate by, like, for example, how they have brought in PLIs for manufacturing. There should be a focused fund, okay, or a focused scheme to drive innovation. Okay, the innovation can be on, maybe it can be on different dimensions of innovation. Somebody wants to actually innovate on product, there is a scheme. There is a service, there is a scheme. Customer experience, there's a scheme. There can be different dimensions of innovation. So some amount of facilitation to drive, because more and more countries today are looking at India, where more and more R&D centers are actually moving to India while we are serving the globe. There's a lot of focus also to focus on innovation for India. Okay, to go about looking at it. Some amount of facilitation can also be done by India. And third is, I mean, by the government. And second is, I would also say, to become more innovative. Okay, and I think technology plays a very, very key role. Today, if you really look at it, I mean, I know some of the other countries where they had some kind of an incentive even for technology implementation, which they positioned as business improvement. And some kind of a schemes were actually done to identify people who are forerunners to look at technologies and identify implementation, also enabling the behaviors of teaching other organizations and communities to go about adopting, also facilitating people, also recognizing people who are able to take care of their suppliers in terms of promoting the entire ecosystem. Maybe these behaviors need to be identified and rewarded to develop innovation as an overall ecosystem, Shekhar. This is what I would say, which need to be done if you have to consistently bring in innovation in the country.
That's great. Uh, yes, you really touched upon many aspects of AI adoption as well as the manufacturing in India, including the taking into account the entire ecosystem and not just the development of the big companies, but also the companies, the suppliers, which are like maybe from the small sector, MSMEs. So getting the entire ecosystem in the global radar for developing the entire Indian manufacturing system, and of course the innovation-led approach as well as the strengthening our innovation and R&D efforts. So that will definitely make a mark for Indian manufacturing to play a really important role in the global manufacturing landscape. So thanks, Satish, for joining us, and it was really great interacting with you. And I myself could also update my knowledge in many aspects of AI adoption in manufacturing. And I look forward to really interacting with you again sometime in future, maybe in person. And the pleasure talking to you. And thanks for joining.
Only one more important point which I would want to just touch upon, because given that it's very, very important, is
Sure.
it's also because while AI has got a lot of power, it needs to be used. Very, very important is also have a strong AI governance in an organization. Okay, because there is still some bit of a doubt on, can I believe AI data? What is the explainability of data? Will it be fair? So there are responsible AI frameworks adopted by different companies. So every company should actually be also defined following set standards, of security, also of GDPR rules, so that's something. And there are guidelines which are actually done right in the beginning in terms of what data is being ingested into AI. Is it fair? Some bit of a bias audits need to be done. So a lot on that also need to be done, which companies need to keep in mind while, adopting AI. I thought it's a very, very important point to be touched upon. while doing this conversation. Really appreciate, and it was a very fantastic set of questions, Shekhar, where was able to share with my own personal perspectives on how AI is transforming the Indian organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Satish.